Pauline Verzosa. It is Wednesday, the 8th of April, and we're bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. And now first on the agenda, U.S. President Donald Trump has halted a major military offensive against Iran following deliberations with Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, coinciding with the expiration of his ultimatum for Tehran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Trump said that almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to between the United States and Iran, but a 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated. This reprieve comes after the U.S. president issued stern warnings of severe consequences if Tehran failed to comply with its demands. Here's the report.
U.S. President Donald Trump warned Iran anew, stressing potentially devastating consequences if no agreement is reached to end the ongoing conflict. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said the situation could lead to massive destruction. He underscored the urgency of a resolution, saying he hopes such an outcome can still be avoided. Amir Said Iravani, Iran's representative to the UN, said Tehran will take immediate and proportionate action if Trump follows through on his threats.
There must be no doubt Iran will take all necessary measures to defend its people, safeguard its sovereignty and territorial integrity, and protect its vital national interest with full resolve. The United States and the Israeli regime will bear responsibility for all subsequent consequences, regional and international.
The chief of the United Nations was also troubled by the statements made by the U.S. president, according to the UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric.
There is no military objective that justifies the wholesale destruction of a society's infrastructure or the deliberate infliction of suffering on civilian populations.
Even Pope Leo XIV said that Trump's threat was truly unacceptable and said any attacks on civilian infrastructure violate international law. Pope Leo recalled his Easter appeal for peace and to reject war.
So come back to the table, let's talk, let's look for solutions in a peaceful way. And let's remember especially the innocent, children, the elderly, the sick, so many people who have already become or will become victims of this continued warfare. To remind all that attacks on civilian infrastructure is against international law, but that it is also a sign of the hatred, the division, the destruction that the human being is capable of.
On Tuesday, plumes of smoke were seen rising over Tehran as airstrikes pounded the Iranian capital hours before the expiration of Trump's latest deadline. Iranian officials urged young people to form human chains to protect power plants. Iran's president said 14 million people, including himself, have volunteered to fight.
Well, back here at home, the country's inflation rate accelerated sharply in March 2026, driven by surging fuel and food prices due to the Middle East conflict. Mobile journalist Amy Atienza has a report.
Philippine inflation jumped to 4.1% in March, marking its highest level in almost 2 years. The last time inflation reached the 4% level was in July 2024, when it racked up 4.4%. March's rate was also higher than the central bank's forecast of 3.1 to 3.9%. This also marked the highest month-on-month jump in inflation at 1.7 percentage points from 2.4% in February. The last time month-on-month inflation exceeded 1 percentage point was from February to March 2022. Food was again more expensive then, and utility rate was also higher. It was around the time when the Russia-Ukraine war broke out. The Philippine Statistics Authority said March's spike was driven mainly by transport costs, which surged to 9.9% amid an oil crisis and the Gulf War. Food and non-alcoholic beverages also contributed to the increase. Then there's the local currency. The PSA says the purchasing power of the peso dropped to 75 centavos in March. This means 1 peso today can only buy goods and services worth 75 centavos. And your 1,000 pesos is actually just worth 750 pesos.
Yung purchasing power of peso natin kasi inversely related yan sa inflation rate, ano? So syempre pag tumataas yung inflation, bumababa yung ating purchasing power. Yung average natin na estimated purchasing power of peso nitong March ay nasa 0.75. Ang ating base dito ay 2018, no? So Yun na yung overall effect ng inflation rate mula simula ng 2018 hanggang ngayon, March.
For economist Jonathan Ravelas, restoring the peso's value will be slow unless food prices stabilize and wages catch up. Ravelas adds that businesses and governments should focus on food inflation and cost control because this is where the peso is bleeding the most. But as the crisis continues, bringing down food costs likewise poses a huge challenge with oil price increases showing no signs of letting up. On Tuesday, April 7, diesel prices, the fuel of the transport sector, is hovering at 170 pesos per liter. PUV groups continue to push for government action in suspending fuel taxes to help ease prices.
5 linggo na po ito na patuloy na pagtaas ng presyo ng langis. Pero ang ginagawa lang sa amin, bibigyan lang kami ng kakarampot na ayuda sa halagang 5,000.
Economists are even predicting fuel prices to breach the 200 peso a liter mark. Even the Energy Department has this grave foresight. Fuel prices may take longer to go back to levels pre-war between Iran and the joint forces of U.S. and Israel. Or worse, the 60 peso per liter fuel may already be a thing of the past. It's the rockets and feathers phenomenon.
Kung gaano kabilis ang pag-akyat ng presyo, hindi ganun po kabilis yung pagbaba ng presyo. In fact, it will be way, way slower because ang damage po ng gera na to ay sobrang, it goes beyond the war na ngayon. Iba na yung epekto niya.
Kapatid Amy Atienza, we are One News.
Well, the Energy Department assures the public that the country has enough oil supply to last until May this year. Energy Secretary Sharon Garin again gave the assurance fuel reserves are in a good stage amid the ongoing global oil crisis. Currently, the breakdown of the supply duration are 57 days for gasoline, 47 days for diesel, and 106 days for kerosene. Garin explained the 50-day supply gives a country sufficient time to replenish oil stocks, which usually takes 7 to 10 days to be delivered. She added the DOE is closely monitoring all oil companies, requiring weekly reports and coordinating with foreign embassies if any issues arise. And when asked about the call of the transport sector to do away with fuel taxes for the meantime, Garin explained this will take time.
The difference kasi on excise tax kasi is it is being charged upon entry into the country, meaning upon importation. So pag na-import mo na, nakabayad ka na. So everything that we are selling now, that it's within country, which is 50 days of supply, excise tax have been paid already for that. So when are the next importations? I think maybe middle of the month or latter of this month. So this is something that they are studying kasi kahit i-announce po mag-excise tax suspension ka na today, that won't be felt yet kasi nabayaran na kasi, di ba, nag-stock up tayo. We're making sure that we have enough supply.
But with diesel now reaching 170 pesos per liter, the question many are asking is, will it hit 200 pesos per liter? The DOE says the situation in the Middle East is volatile and so prices are also fluctuating. But they say this scenario is not impossible.
Kasi if ever it goes down, it will take longer. It will not be 1 month. Kung gaano kabilis ang pag-akyat ng presyo, hindi ganun po kabilis yung pagbaba ng presyo. In fact, it will be way, way slower because ang damage po ng gera na to ay sobrang, I do not expect it to go down as fast.
And in other news, the Presidential Communications Office filed a complaint with the Department of Justice against the Facebook page Malasakit News Pilipinas for spreading false posts amid the country's energy emergency. Acting Secretary Dave Gomez said the complaint cites Article 154 of the revised Penal Code, which penalizes the unlawful use of publications. The posts included a fake energy lockdown promoting solar panels, a fabricated fuel shortage, and a false emergency lockdown linked to the Cicada COVID-19 variant. The investigation was conducted under the PCO's Oplan Contra Fake News initiative, launched to monitor and to counter misinformation. Now, don't go away. We will be back with more stories right after this break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning and welcome back. I'm Pauline Verzosa. And here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and we give you the context behind the headlines. The Philippine Statistics Authority says 1 peso in 2018 is now worth just 75 centavos as of March 2026. Now, that means 1,000 pesos back then now only has the value of 750 pesos. PSA Chief Claire Dennis Mapa says this is due to rising inflation, which accelerated to 4.1% in March, the fastest in 20 months. The spike was driven by a series of fuel price hikes amid the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. The PSA adds as inflation rises, the purchasing power of the peso declines. And now for more on how rising prices are affecting consumers and retailers, we're now joined by Steven Kua, president of the Philippine Amalgamated Supermarkets Association. Good morning to you, Steve, and thanks for being back here on Morning Matters.
Good morning, Bowie.
All right, so Steve, in the last couple of weeks, we've already seen the prices of fuel, of LPG skyrocketing, but let's talk about the basic commodities. Have you monitored any price increases already since the month of April began?
No major increases for basic necessities and prime commodities. No, there have been advice from suppliers, no, that they will increase. Some said May 1. Okay, others are still thinking, when and by how much and what items. No, pero yun na nga, wala pa naman nag-abiso na major manufacturer na magtataas sila before April 16.
Yes, so the DTI also said that manufacturers have pledged not to raise prices of basic and prime commodities at least until April 16. But you said, Steve, you haven't monitored any significant increases. But if that date comes, April 17, are we looking at a big increase? Should consumers brace themselves already for a sharp uptick in prices?
Exactly. People are saying, I'm going to shop April 14 or 15. Don't, okay? I mean, again, it's going to cause some panic buying, right? So, just because they said before April 15, they're not supposed to advise supermarkets that they're going to increase, doesn't mean they're going to increase the following day. And even if they do, we haven't ordered our goods yet. So, it's not going to happen immediately. See? Maybe the second week of April or maybe May. Some have already pushed back to May, just so they allowed others to increase first. No? So don't go panic buying because, again, it's not gonna be mapapaaga pa lalo, no, yung pag-increase ng presyo natin. Yes.
And it might just create panic amongst consumers and buyers. But Steve, which goods or products do you think, or would you say, are seeing the most price pressures right now?
They're all getting, they're all receiving the pressure from all over, no? So it depends on the management, no, of the company, of these manufacturers, no, which ones or which items they want to increase the prices first, no, because I'm sure they're going to do it in tranches and they're going to be selective. It's not going to be across the board. It's not going to be all items at the same time. So
we're talking about canned goods, bread, coffee, the usual basic commodities, right, Steve?
I guess because all of them need to adjust their prices, but have been holding it off, right? So brace ourselves for, even as we speak. After this interview, I'll be going to Senate for a hearing by the Committee on Agriculture, Food, and Entrepreneurship, again to ask about what's happening, on ground level on the prices of items, and brace ourselves for some increase come third week of April.
But we're now already in the 5th week of consecutive price increases when it comes to fuel. Diesel is now hitting already about 170 pesos per liter. How is that affecting transportation costs, the cost of suppliers, manufacturers? I mean, how significant is this? Will this eventually be on prices?
It's affecting them in a big way. The distributors, the people who distribute to the retail outlets, these are people who buy the items from the manufacturers and get to distribute it in behalf of the manufacturers. They're the ones feeling the brunt. I'm sure they're passing it on to the manufacturers, and manufacturers are saying, okay, we'll shoulder it for the moment. Let's see how we can, get some payback afterwards after we increase and adjust our prices. No, so for the moment, I think they're shouldering, the burden of the increase in price of fuel.
But up to what extent, Steve, right? Up to what extent can distributors, even manufacturers, and you, the retailers, absorb these costs versus passing them on eventually to consumers?
Like I said, it's a personal decision by the management of the manufacturers, and we thank them. I guess, no, everyone, all the consumers, no, in behalf of all consumers, we thank the manufacturers for carrying it on their shoulders for the moment. No, I mean, of course, they'll think of some way to get back what the expenses, no, the expenses they incurred, no, during this difficult period.
But walk us through the psychology of pricing as well, Steve, because I know it's also a tough balancing act. Manufacturers, they also don't want to lose their market share. They have to stay competitive. They can't just jack up prices, right? So how do you think that balancing act will be for this whole supply chain?
I guess it's a lot of corporate espionage. They're looking at their competitors and saying, nag-increase na ba yung kalaban natin for these items? No, if they have, by how much? And when, right? So timing is critical because, like you said, they don't want to lose market share. It's bad enough even before this conflict in the Middle East. All this talk about corruption is already making consumers jittery, no? And then with this added, war in the Middle East, now it has compounded, no, the fear of manufacturers and consumers, no, that prices will, zoom out of proportion. So everybody's thinking of how to get across this episode in a way where you don't come up with, in black and blue. So, they are very careful. Like you said, it's a tightrope act. It's a balancing act, no? And they're very careful that, that they don't lose market share if and when they increase their prices.
But how are your sales amid this crisis, Steve? Have you already noticed a shift or a decline in consumer spending, especially now that people are tightening their belts?
For stores selling to the well-to-do, there were long queues last weekend. No? So for those who selling to the market, Pag-asa members, our association members sell to the masses. No? So wala pang additional sales so far. People are calm. I mean, consumers are relatively calm. Those buying are those who need their items for their small businesses, calendaria, bake shop, coffee shop. No, but aside from that, households have been very calm. No, they are expectant that they're expecting prices to go up, but they've been very disciplined not to go panic buying.
So no significant decline as well, Steve.
No decline. It's business as usual, but no great increase in sales for most of the stores which sell to the majority of the market.
Okay, so yesterday, the BSP announced that inflation has already accelerated to 4.1% in March. It's the highest in nearly 2 years. Do you see the projected increases in the coming weeks in terms of basic goods and commodities? Will that affect inflation even further?
Logically speaking, yes. The good secretary of DOE, Doreen, just mentioned that even if this is what I heard also at the congressional hearing where I was present on energy, no, the hearing on energy, which says that even if the president suspends the excise tax, it doesn't happen immediately. No, it'll happen another probably 30 days from the time he signs it into effect. No, so brace ourselves for a little bit more belt tightening. No, so spend properly, plan your trips, plan what things you have to do, prioritize properly.
Okay, now let's talk about the purchasing power of the Philippine peso because the numbers, are quite alarming and the outlook is quite grim. 1,000 pesos from 2018 is now only worth 750 pesos as of April 2026, and that's a 25% decrease, of course, due to inflation over the past 8 years. But help us understand, Steve, given today's prices, I mean, what can you buy now with 1,000 pesos? What can you buy in supermarkets? How different is the basket now compared to how it was 5 or 3 years ago?
Pawi, I'm not that alarmed. No, I mean, in this particular sense, I still find supermarkets with a lot of sale items. It's you just have to go out and go choose the supermarkets. No, again, there are some which are just in your neighborhood which have sale sections, and they're selling items at you know cheaper than before this war took place. See, so you just have to open your eyes and open your mind to items which are on sale. When I say on sale, not just price off. Sometimes it's premiums added to your item, or bundled package. No, but you could save a lot at up to now. Up to now, so people are saying wala akong choice. Magtataas lahat. There are supermarkets with sale sections, not just sale items are sometimes on the shelves, and very difficult to look for these, no. But for items for supermarkets which have sections for sale items, there was one which took off their laki na kanilang sale item section. They took it off last year, no, for whatever reason, no. Pero yun na nga, look for stores with those sections, and no brainer. The items are so cheap. Of course, if you find items that you need there. If you don't, then at least it's a balance. Some items you probably will be able to get at sale prices, and some you don't. But at least it's a good balance than just picking off the shelves whatever you need.
But then there's also that question, Steve, right? Is 1,000 pesos still enough for a family and for their daily needs? Because, I remember like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, a basket could be filled with all your necessities. But now, parang talagang onti na lang yung nabibili sa 1,000, and as the data shows, it's now just only worth 750 pesos. I mean, how are families gonna cope? Is this still enough?
That's why, Howie, I'm saying be selective, and open yourselves to the fact that there are options now, because some people don't consider some brands and say, I don't like this, I don't like that. I heard that this is not good. Try them. You'll find out that you can still make your budget fit. Not easy, but you can. So try the items that you haven't tried, and find out that, hey, I can still make my budget fit pala. Yeah.
Well, I love the optimism, and of course, it's also you're with supermarkets, trying to help consumers get the best bang for their buck. But Steve, some analysts are also noting that people are also starting to cut back when in terms of choosing fresh produce. They're now opting for cheaper and filling alternatives such as instant noodles, the canned goods and the like. Is that what you're seeing as well in your stores? And what are the potential implications if that's the consumer behavior we're now seeing?
I'm sure. Like you mentioned, I go in with a budget. I have $1,000. I got to make it fit. So I have to choose items which will make it fit. So I might have to substitute my favorite brand with another brand, or my fresh produce with processed goods. No? I mean, you have to make that balance as a consumer. No, you can't have it all. And the way it seems, we'll have to deal with that for the next few months. No, that's why there is importance in trying to develop for the government to develop long-term plans for industries. No, so that we don't rely on imported items and raw materials. No? Yeah.
And the sad part about this crisis is that no one is really spared. So, Steve, how are supermarkets supporting your workers during this period, aside from, of course, giving them fair wages? Are you also offering any kind of support to cushion the impact of higher costs nowadays?
Well, some supermarkets are giving their employees additional allowance in terms of, we say allowance not in terms of cash, but in terms of grocery items now. Or they can choose to buy some items at a discounted rate. I mean, those are the things we can do. Others are cutting back on store hours, save on energy. Others have not even adjusted their hours from the COVID days, no? And they close by 6:30. Would you believe? Now, there are some supermarkets, neighborhood supermarkets, doing very well, but cutting down on store hours, no, like that. That way, they save on energy and they save on their operating costs, no. For the people, for the employees, no, we're not laying off people right now. We're just afraid that if this carries on, it's not us. It's probably the manufacturers, no, and distributors who may have to lay people off, no. That's why we need to do urgent. Government needs to come up with the what you call this, the suggestions, no, and the procedures and advice, no, on what to do so that we can all save up on energy and fuel.
Are there any low-hanging fruits that the government can do right now, can provide to this sector in order to help ease the pressure on manufacturers, on retailers, and the workers?
That's exactly what Senate hearings and congressional hearings are doing and about to do. As I said, after this interview, I will be heading to the Senate now, to try to come up with measures and hopefully come up with suggestions on how to ease the burden of the consumer these days.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning. That was Stephen Kua, president of the Philippine Amalgamated Supermarkets Association. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you for having me, Pauline.
Do stay tuned. Morning Matters. We'll be back after a short break. Keep it here. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Manila 2nd District Representative Rolando Valeriano has proposed the Agapay sa Hanap Buhay at Operasyon ng Negosyo or AHON as a more responsive alternative to the Bayanihan 3 measure. In an interview with 1PH's Sa Totoo Lang, Valeriano said the government must act immediately to help citizens cope with the worsening effects of the Middle East conflict and the ongoing oil crisis. Among the interventions he is advocating is a monthly aid of 3,000 pesos for low-income earners over the next 18 months.
Every time na nagkakaroon naman tayo ng ganitong aberya, laging, eto hindi naman natin neglected yung mga nasa ibaba, kasali pa rin po. Pero this time, medyo targeted tong bill ko na pinasok at sigurado makakasali rito yung middle class dahil as we all know, pagdating naman po ng dulo, nagdurusa naman din talaga tayo mga nasa middle class. Ang importante po rito sa bill na pinapasok ko, targeted, siguradong magbe-benepisyo yung middle class down to doon sa pinakamababang level ng ating lipunan. Kaya maganda po ito at bukas merong joint session hearing sa Congress, magsama-sama po yung ilang committee para pag-usapan itong mga panukala nating batas. Ang nilagay ko po rito, 18 months yung tatagal yung batas ko. So for 18 months, tatanggap po ng 3,000 yung lower income. Yun po yung mga sumesweldo ng less than 25,000 a month. So sila po magbe-benefit po dyan. Bukod pa po dyan na magkakaroon ng toll fee reduction kasama po sa batas natin. So naniniwala ko kapag bumaba yung toll fee natin, bababa lahat ng cost. Yung airport fee reduction, seaport reduction, tapos magkakaroon din ng loan payment relief. Para po ba yung bayanihan 2 nung araw? Kaya lang yung bayanihan 2 po nung araw, kumbaga kahit sino eh. Ito po talagang targeted natin dahil ito naman krisis sa gasolina, sa crude oil. So marapat lamang po na dapat tumbukin natin dahil para ma-pump up ba yung ekonomiya natin para gumalaw at nang kahit papano naman po magtuloy-tuloy yung huwag bumagsak yung inflation rate natin. Kaya ito po yung naisip ko na bill. Siguro po ito timely dahil nga sa nararanasan nating problema gawa ng giyera dito sa Middle East.
And now for more on animal welfare concerns following a controversial Holy Week ritual. We're now joined by Attorney Heidi Kagiwa, Program Director for the Animal Kingdom Foundation. Attorney Heidi, good morning and thanks for joining us here on Morning Matters.
Yes, good morning, IC, and good morning to all of your viewers and listeners.
All right, so Attorney Heidi, first can we get the Animal Kingdom Foundation's reaction when you saw this video of a dove being tied to balloons during this Easter Salubong ceremony? From an animal welfare standpoint, help us understand what exactly was wrong.
I see it was definitely wrong. It was cruel and it was irresponsible on the part of the church management or the clergy in using the dove in this type of religious celebration. The tying of the bird, forcing the bird and then lifting it, hoisting it, and making using or exploiting this bird for purposes of a symbolic reflection is wrong because it did not just cause distress to the animal, it actually even caused its death because it was thereafter used, no, or placed in the balloons and died and then let the balloons flew. And we cannot just imagine what happened to the dove after.
And it was clearly seen in the video, attorney, no, that the wings of the bird was restrained. It was tied to the balloons, causing it distress. Pero sabi po ng Diocese of Caloocan, attorney, actually, pinapractice na nila ito for decades, even dating back to post-World War II. But from your knowledge, is this a documented practice? And does tradition justify the use of live animals in this way?
Actually, we were surprised that there was such a practice. We've never seen any in the past. So this really came as a shocker to all of us as an animal welfare group. We have made similar campaigns to stop the use of animals in rituals, in traditions, and cultural practices in the past. But never did we imagine that this would happen in a Catholic celebration, and of course it's hello, sorry, I'm losing you.
Go ahead, attorney. We can still hear you.
And of course the fact that it's been practiced for a long time does not justify the fact that it is cruel, that it was inhumane. I think there are so many alternative practices or humane practices to replace the use of animals in symbolic or the symbol for rituals and religious practices. And it's about time that we should adjust and reflect the true message of love and compassion and translate it to actual exercise of compassion and respect, not just to human beings, but to also include animals in these respects.
And from your legal assessment, Attorney Heidi, did this act violate the Animal Welfare Act? And if so, which specific provisions may have been breached? Go ahead.
This definitely is a violation of the Animal Welfare Act, or RA 8485 as amended by RA 10631, and the violation specifically relates to Section 6 of the Animal Welfare Act, where it prohibits the infliction of cruelty, maltreatment to animals, no, and there is nothing or nowhere in the provision that would exempt the commission of this, that would exempt or justify the commission of this cruel activity.
And is the Animal Kingdom Foundation mulling filing any charges? The Diocese of Caloocan has already released a statement apologizing for what transpired. They said the act was regrettable, and they have already actually committed to discontinuing this practice, this type of ceremony. But will you consider pursuing legal action?
Actually, that was one of the things that we are considering. When I heard or when I read the statement of the bishop, I think for me it's still vague, because he made reference to the releasing of the bird or the balloons, no? He made reference to not, or to discontinue the putting of the bird or of the pigeon in the balloons, but that the birds would be released after. So that was his statement. So for me, they will not stop the use of the doves or the birds, but they will use it after. They will release it after. For me, it's not a matter of whether they will release the birds or not after, but it's the concern really is how the birds is being used before, during, and after the activity, because there are issues already raised on the handling, there's issues already raised on the treatment, and exposure and exploitation of the birds in these celebrations. So we are still appealing for the church to stop the use of live animals in these religious celebrations.
For you, Attorney Heidi, ano po kaya siguro yung safer alternatives, more humane practices that could be done for celebrations like this? And are there clear guidelines on the use of animals in public celebrations, or kailangan magkaroon na tayo po ng ganun?
For public celebrations, there are yet no clear guidelines or specific guidelines. But I think the Animal Welfare Act is very clear in terms of the prohibition on the use of animals that would expose them to unnecessary pain and suffering, to cruelty and possible maltreatment, especially that animal cruelty is not just physical restraint or physical pain, no, but it also includes psychological. There are so many other alternatives that can be considered. There's what we already have digital technologies. So why do we need to use live animals and use them in a very unnatural way? Imagine or remember that the dove in this particular case was forced to open its wings and tied its wings just so it would reflect that the bird is flying nor extending its wings. When in truth, we could have used the digital media to reflect or to show the kind of message that we would want to show or to express to the people in a particular celebration.
But Attorney Heidi, looking at the bigger picture, are cases of animal cruelty in the Philippines increasing? I know we have the Animal Welfare Act, but how effective has it really been in preventing animal cruelty on the ground?
For me, there's already a marked significance in terms of reduction in animal cruelty cases. What's happening right now is because social media is really on its height, and people's consciousness has grown in terms of awareness. Hence, people has become more active in reporting. People has become more conscious on whether or not the particular situation is an animal welfare concern or matter or a case. Hence, it feels like we have really more animal welfare cases now, but not really. But we still want to encourage people to report. Whether or not the Animal Welfare Act is effective, it's for me it's not, because there's so many gray areas. It's not a complete or holistic law that would cover a national program for animal welfare. So while we appreciate the fact that the Philippines was the first that would have its animal welfare law in Southeast Asia, but it's really high time to improve, to revise the animal welfare law to reflect and to consider the changing times as well. We have seen so many situations that may not have been specifically covered or considered in the law. Now is the time to have that revised. Now is the time for a specific government agency that would really just take a look at animal welfare and focus on its implementation.
And on the part of the public, Attorney, what should ordinary citizens do if they do witness this animal cruelty on the ground? Where should they report it, and what steps should they take?
We would like to appeal for the general public to, when they witness animal cruelty, to please report to the barangay, report to the police. I know that there's so many complaints about the barangays being quote unquote inutil about it, but it's still, we have to respect the process. We have to report it to the barangay, we have to report it to the police, we have to report it to the local government agencies like the city veterinarian, the provincial veterinarian offices, and also to the animal welfare groups, especially if they have local groups in the area. We always say is that animal welfare is not an individual campaign, it's not an individual program, it's a community effort. It takes a village to curb and to stop animal cruelty or improve the living conditions of animals. Hence, if anyone would see, would notice, or would witness, please do report. Don't be scared, don't be afraid. Take action.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time and for joining us this morning. That was Attorney Heidi Kagiwa, Program Director for the Animal Kingdom Foundation.
Thank you very much, IC.
And in other news, Vice President Sara Duterte is still the preferred presidential candidate among Filipinos. That's based on the latest survey by public opinion research firm WR Numero. Almost 36% of the respondents chose Sara Duterte. And trailing her are Senator Raffy Tulfo with almost 19% and former Vice President and now Naga City Mayor Leni Robredo with about 16%. In an interview with Storycon, Dr. Robin Garcia, founder and chairman of WR Numero, noted that although Duterte continues to lead, her support has not seen a significant increase even after formally announcing her presidential bid.
Something to note is that the data represent a post-announcement sort of story and headline. And we were expecting that she was going to surge into a higher position, but that's something that we don't see, despite the fact that previously you also had a similar list of 12 names for president. But she's stable at 35%, and the second, as you said, is Raffy Tulfo at 18%. So there's a sizable gap between Raffy Tulfo and Sara Duterte, and you also have Leni Robredo, who, if you push the logic and you apply the margin of error, could actually be considered as statistically tied with Raffy Tulfo in second place. That's something that we saw in our previous release in December or November. But yeah, so these are the three names at the top of the list who have also garnered a double-digit result. So Sara Duterte, Raffy Tulfo, and Leni Robredo. But we know very well that I think Leni Robredo and Raffy Tulfo have been deflecting announcements for the possible candidacy. And in fact, some of them have already said that they're not running for president. But in Philippine politics, we know very well that the story might change closer to the elections.
Now, don't go away. We still have more matters to discuss after this break. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. The LTFRB will launch a service contracting program to support commuters and transport operators amid rising fuel costs. This initiative was first introduced during the COVID-19 pandemic, where the government will hire both traditional and modern jeepneys and pay them per kilometer. The LTFRB will also temporarily employ buses and UV Express units. 15 to 20,000 units stand to benefit from the program, covering up to 800 routes nationwide.
We do not anticipate this 800 million to last for very long, no? Mas lalo na kung talaga gusto natin mapalawak yung coverage nito. So we are anticipating, i-request na naman kami ng panibagong budget, malapit na maubos itong 800 million na to.
In an interview with The Big Story, Manibela chairperson Marval Buena pushed for improvements in service contracting program coverage and payment efficiency. The group stressed that no driver should be left out of government support initiatives.
Sana kung ipatutupad yung libreng sakay sa April 15 ng national government, ng DOTR at LTFRB, sana po makasama lahat at mabayaran po on time. Kasi po kung hindi po kami mababayaran on time, saan naman din po kami kukuha ng ipang-aabono doon sa mga gasolinahan. Buti po sana kung pautangin po kami ng mga gasolinahan ng crudo araw-araw sa loob po ng isang buwan. At ilan po kaming mga unit na pauutangin din po nila kung sakali.
So Mar, may konting linaw ba ang nakikita ka sa sitwasyon ninyo ngayon?
Wala po akong nakikitang malinaw pa na direksyon, Ma'am Ces, kung ang pag-uusapan ay galing sa national government. Hindi nga makapagpakita si Secretary Garin sa atin para matanong natin siya ng diretso kung ano na po ba ang kalagayan namin sa pamamasada kung patuloy po natataas ang presyo ng petrolyo. Alam niyo ho, yung iro-roll out ng national government, meron na po ba silang sinabi kung ilang araw lang po ba ito at ilang pong ruta lamang ang makakasama? Ang naririnig ko lamang po 700 routes. Ang buong NCR po nasa 750 to 780 routes. So ibig sabihin yung pondo po ng national government pang NCR lang. Paano po yung mga nasa probinsya? Dito lamang po sa Metro Manila, dito lamang po sa Manila, kung hindi po ako nagkakamali, nasa 22 routes na po ito. Pero hindi pa lahat nakasama.
And at this point, let's get an update on cash aid distribution for transport workers outside of Metro Manila. In Antipolo, Rizal, tricycle drivers are receiving financial assistance amid rising fuel costs and daily expenses. For the latest, we have our mobile journalist Jazz Paredes reporting to us live on the ground. Jazz, kamusta na ang pamamahagi ng ayuda dyan?
Pauline, masasabi nga nating smooth sailing sa ngayon yung pamamahagi ng cash aid assistance sa mga tricycle drivers dito sa Antipolo City. Kung makikita nyo sa aking likuran, wala na rin masyadong mga dumadating. Yan ay dahil meron silang nakatakdang scheduling. For now, yung nakaschedule para makakuha na kanilang cash aid assistance ay alphabetical. So nakita natin doon sa listahan na provide ng DSWD included ngayong araw. Pero nakita rin natin meron silang designated time ng pagkuha. Merong 7 a.m. and meron ding 1 p.m. Pero nakausap natin kanina sa loob na even yung mga 1 p.m. daw na dumating ngayong umaga ay pinayagan na silang makapasok dahil nga maayos at mabilis lang yung proseso sa loob. Kaya naman hindi mahaba yung pila. Kaya dahil pwede na rin silang makakuha para at least mapunan yung oras na wala masyadong kumukuha. And for now, ang paalala daw ng DSWD, kapag pupunta sila dito, ay kailangan nilang kumuha kailangan nilang dalhin yung kanilang original na driver's license and photocopy na may 3 signatures at siguraduhin daw na hindi ito expired. At paalala rin nila kasi mayroong mga pumupunta dito na hindi nakaschedule ngayong araw dahil nga alphabetical, ay mag-antay daw doon sa araw na schedule nila. And may mga kausap tayong ilan kanina na wala sa listahan o hindi ugma yung kanilang pangalan dahil nga pagka hindi parehas yung spelling at hindi akma doon sa kanilang driver's license ay hindi sila papayagang basta-basta makakuha. Although na-assist naman sila sa help assistance desk kanina, meron pa rin mga hindi pinayagan. Pero hindi naman daw ibig sabihin noon na hindi sila makakakuha, Polino. Kailangan lang matapos yung nakatakdang scheduling for all the letters of the alphabet ng apelido at pagkatapos noon ay magse-set down ng special na payout para doon sa mga hindi nakalista ngayong araw.
At just ini-implement na ba ng DSWD yung payment via digital apps o cash pa rin ito?
Sa ngayon, Polino, cash pa rin yung ina-apply nila na payout dahil iniiwasan din nila yung hindi naman sa pagkakamali, Polino, no? Pero pinag-aaralan pa raw nila yung payout ng pa-digital. Pero sa ngayon kasi mas maganda raw na personal na kinukuha yung kanilang cash aid assistance. Kagaya nga ngayon, ang mahigpit na bilin din ay bawal yung pupunta dito yung representative para kumuha na lang cash aid assistance. Mas prefer or mas yun yung nakalagay talaga sa regulations na kailangan yung mismong tao yung kukuha para rin maiwasan yung fraud or maiwasan yung mga hindi naman sila yung tao pero sila yung makakakuha ng cash aid assistance. So ngayon, talagang kung sino lang yung nakalista or sino yung mismong tao, sila daw talaga dapat yung kukuha ngayong araw. And mayroon pang additional na advice para makatipid sa gasolina, Polino, na mag-carpooling na lang daw papunta dito. And may mga nakita tayo kanina na yung tricycle nila, puno ng mga tricycle drivers, sama-sama na silang pupunta dito para at least makasave din ng gas and mas efficient daw pagpunta dito, Pauline.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that update. That was mobile journalist Jazz Paredes. As fuel costs continue to rise, commuters are turning to electric alternatives, prompting some e-bike businesses to report sales increases of up to 500%. Mobile journalist Jazz Paredes is back with this report.
Coping with the surge in oil prices has become a challenge for motorists and everyday commuters. Some opt to switch to public transportation, while others turn to greener options such as electric vehicles. With this, many businesses selling e-bikes and conversion kits have become an instant hit as demand rises. One of them is an e-vehicle shop based in Davao City, where sales increased not just by 100%, but up to 500% of its usual daily sales since the start of the oil price hike in March.
Times 5 talaga, times 4 to times 5 na ang inalaki. As in, nagulat kami. As in, nag-expect kami na baka madoble lang. First week pa lang ng April is parang nakukuha ko na yung 1 month lang na number ng sales niya.
Vintoys PH was established in 2022. With just one sale a day, Marvin did not foresee that a crisis would skyrocket demand for e-vehicles. Marvin sells a variety of e-bikes and e-scooters, with prices ranging from 15,000 up to 70,000 pesos or more.
Nga sabi ko sa'yo, sa first 2 years namin, hindi pa masyadong kilala ng Pilipino ang mga electric. And then, pagpasok nitong crisis, hindi na si Ostron or si Mavi na ang naging bestseller. Naging bestseller ko na yung mga V-bike ko. Yun siya yung mga fat tire. Napakalakas ng kanyang sales ngayon kasi mas siya yung convenient siguro for any type of commuters.
Meanwhile, e-conversion kits that turn regular mountain bikes into electric ones have also gained popularity since last month.
Una, ang mga bumibili sa akin yan is yung mga medyo nagkakaedad na dating nagbabike. Okay, so humihina na daw yung tuhod nila, kaya gusto nila, one way na lang yung nagpapadyak sila. Bilang nagkaroon ng crisis, nagkaroon ng dagdag na mga market. Kahit mga security guard, janitor na nakabike lang noon, na bumibili na rin sila.
However, many are intimidated by the high cost of these e-vehicles and kits. A quality e-vehicle may cost as much as traditional diesel-powered vehicles. However, Marvin disagrees.
1 kilowatt lang yung kinakain per full charge. So, palagay natin sa Meralco, sa Maynila, nasa 11 or 12 pesos. Dito naman sa Davao City, nasa mga 9 to 10 pesos yata. Isang full charge mo natatakbo ng 20 to 50 kilometers. 10 piso lang yung bayad mo. Stage ka ng 2,000 to 5,000 a month. 5,000 na yung minimin ko noon yun yung hindi nag-oil increase
However, as much as Marvin's business thrives amid the ongoing oil crisis, he hopes for it to end as it could also affect the business despite selling e-vehicles.
Tataas yung nagdi-deliver from our factory going to Philippines. Pagdating sa warehouse, ida-drive yun going sa akin. Wala pa naman yata ang mga local shipping company ngayon na naka-electric yung nila. So, they are using gas. So, magsa-charge sila sa akin na mas malaki-laki.
But for now, he recommends.
Sana hindi mangyari pero magkakaroon ng new normal na hindi ganun kabababa ang gasolina. I suggest na habang medyo mura-mura pa ang mga electric scooter, hindi lang sa Vintoys, kung nasaan ka man ngayon, bumili ka na ng e-bike dyan sa syudad nyo. Para meron ka ng pangbala.
Kapatid Jas Paredes, we are One News.
And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you just the right start to your morning. Let's make the day matter. I'm Pauline Verzosa. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time.